Okay, hey guys, this is my introduction to the Destroyer. I'm going to start with a disclaimer, which is directed at family members, concerned professionals, and whoever else. So it goes, please note, there is no way for you to really know if I believe what I'm talking about, or if this is all just some kind of crazy performance art. Before you freak out or get carried away with any other kind of reaction, please take a moment to think about this fact, as well as the type of person I am, being an artist, musician, nutjob. Okay, that's out of the way. Fuck, I'm insecure as hell. I don't really want to be making this video today. I don't know why. Like, I've been thinking about it for ages, and then I come and sit down to do it, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't want to. I'm also really tired, and I'm in totally the wrong mood, and a whole lot of anxiety. But we will continue. Okay, so yeah. Basically, this is probably going to be the first in a series. I do have like some rough notes just to try and keep me on topic because you know how I am. But yeah, I think I'm going to have to make this into a series, so this will be the first one. Basically, things that I'm going to try and cover in the series will be what it is and isn't, its influence on my sense of self and the things I do, how it makes me feel, especially physically, behavioral changes and switching, triggers, its disappearance and reappearance, what's different now, what's changed, theories on how it first came to be, and answering your questions about it, and so on. And there's probably going to be more stuff that I haven't thought of last night when I was trying to think of what to say, scrapped the first one, and went to this really stripped down version. But anyway, so I'm sorry if I'm talking fast. It's probably because I'm anxious, but hopefully you get the gist of sort of where we're going with this, especially if you're from like 10 years ago and you already know what I'm talking about. Those are some things we'll get to. As for a proper introduction for people who don't know, I guess that's what this video is, but maybe a recap for anyone else who used to watch me. So let's start off with what it is and isn't. Oh my god. I will try to do this video without doing edits because yeah, but I'm freaking insecure today and I don't know why it's so much harder all of a sudden. But anyway, so the Destroyer is basically the name that I give to my dark side, which sounds corny as hell now that I'm saying it out loud. But yeah, I think that's probably the simplest way to explain it. But then you know, because of pop culture and also some other things that exist or are thought to exist in psychology, it can get a little bit confusing. So I've got a list of other things to address. So dark side, I mean, because you know, what do you usually think of when you think of dark side? Maybe like Star Wars, but that's kind of a different thing altogether. That's the Force, blah blah. We're not talking about that kind of stuff. Otherwise, I mean, if you noticed that I'm obsessed with Jekyll and Hyde, this is probably why. Fuck, I'm butchering this. I hope I'm not butchering it, but I'm like, I think I'm in defensive mode because, you know, this isn't something I try and make public a lot. So now that I am, again, addressing it, suddenly all my defenses have come up and are trying to stop me talking about it. So I'm sorry if this is crazy. Okay, so moving on to the next point. Okay, comparing it to imaginary friends and fictional characters. So imaginary friend, I'm not sure I would call it that sort of a relationship. Also, I don't experience this part of me as being separate from myself. It's definitely inside myself. In terms of fictional characters, I think at some point I will get onto the origin of aspects of it, but where it got its name from was definitely, is it name? It's not like it really has a separate name because it's still me technically, but it's got its own title and it's the Destroyer. You know, we could have chosen something more subtle, but no, it kind of just happened and I just stuck with it because I feel like I don't really have a choice. No, fictional characters. So when all that name, title, whatever solidified would have been when I was RPGing online. When I say RPGing, I think I've mentioned before, I don't mean like Dungeons and Dragons style RPGing. I mean like co-story writing sort of, except we each had our own characters to bring to the show, and then every now and then someone would take turns to be the bad guy, you know, run the bad guys and so on, except that often when I was running the show in terms of bad guys, my character would end up being the bad guy, which I guess maybe says something about my psychological instability and so on, and you know, we can get into the implications of growing up Catholic and whether that's affected this. But so, in some sense, like, I've written a lot of fictional characters. I used to write a lot of stories. And I've come up with a lot of different characters. There are some that I remember better than others, but this is the only one that has stuck around in any kind of form, and instead of me just being able to get in the headspace to be able to write the character, it feels a lot deeper than that. So in some sense you could maybe compare imaginary friend fictional character, but it also has deeper elements and differences. The next thing, the most logical thing to me, what it is just a state of mind. That's something about the fictional character thing, right? So when you invent a character for story writing purposes, you know that it's just something you've made up, but the character itself generally doesn't know that it's been made up, so it will insist that it's real, and because it's stuck somehow in my psychology, it keeps insisting that it's real, even though I'm like, no, you kind of probably just the thing that I made up, channeled a bunch of shit into, and I don't know, it won't go away. Maybe because I tried not to show that aspect of myself in my life, especially when I was younger at school and whatever. Oh my god, am I making sense? I don't know. But so state of mind, of course, being a character, it doesn't like being called a state of mind. I think maybe the only character really, well, there's probably more, but the most prominent character I know of that knows it's not really real or living in a real universe might be Deadpool. Otherwise, most other characters have no idea that their world is not the real world and that they are not real and so on. Does that make sense? Oh my god. So a state of mind, why do I say that? Because it does feel like I switch into a different state of mind because of this character. So most of the time I'm just me, I'm kind of grumpy. I guess like when I get depressed, that feels like, I mean, that's kind of a state of mind, and it changes what memories you're more likely to have access to, in the sense that when depressed people are more likely to recall negative events. Whereas when I'm healthy, I mean, I suppose I do think about some stuff that's shit, but I don't really think about everything that's shit so much. So it's kind of like that, except that like I don't really have the same experience of depression feeling like another person the way that this Destroyer stuff does. Yeah, and I don't know, I'm a little bit confused in my head about how to explain it. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you can get into a different state of mind, but it doesn't feel like another person. With this, though, for some reason, it just feels like another person. So yes, occasionally, these days, I don't really switch into that state of mind the way I used to as fully or anything, but it's sort of like there in the background. And then occasionally, there have been moments where I've been a little bit more switchy. Speaking of switchy, okay, so state of mind, to me, I'm like, as a logical person who hopefully mostly believes in science, but I mean, I'm a little bit like, hey brain, what are you doing? No, the science logical part of me says that it's just a state of mind that I can get into, and that explains why it's a little bit more than a fictional character. Because you do have to get into the mind of characters, but you're not really getting into a different state of mind, are you? I don't know what experiences are like in other people's heads. Fuck. You can see how fucking nervous I am, because I'm just like... Okay, so speaking of switching, so that's the kind of language you might hear when people are talking about dissociative identity disorder, split personality. It was also called multiple personality disorder at some point. So, I mean, it's just kind of unfortunate that the switching is the easiest way to explain some of that kind of stuff. But no, this isn't dissociative identity disorder. I don't experience memory loss. I know I just mentioned like with depression, it's easier to access certain memories, but it's not like you've forgotten the rest of your life. It's just that it's easier to recall certain memories. I don't know if with the Destroyer stuff, do I remember things differently? I'm not sure. I think I would have to actually get into that state of mind to really think about it, and then I probably wouldn't be thinking about it. So, but no, so I don't really experience any memory loss. If I do get all switchy, it's not like it's not like I forget anything. I'm always aware. I think it's the Destroyer side that's not always present, but when it is present, it's not like it has to catch up on anything. It just knows everything I know because it is me. That's the sort of difficult thing. In the end, it's still me, but somehow it feels different. And so talking about it as if it's another person sometimes makes things easier, but on the other hand, there's so much that's just me anyway. I think that's why it's so hard to explain, because I get confused in my own head about what's going on. But no, so I don't have memory loss. and I haven't experienced any trauma, any childhood trauma. Also, like dissociative identity disorder, the science around it is a little bit shaky. Like there's not as clear a consensus about it, and also, you know, how do you diagnose someone? How can you tell the difference between someone who's just faking it versus someone who actually might have it? They're not entirely sure. There's supposedly been some brain scans, but there's also been some doubt about that. So, you know, you can argue whether or not it exists, but the point being, really, I shouldn't even have gotten into whether or not it exists. The point is that I don't have it. It's just one of those sort of, sometimes the language of it can be easier to explain what's going on in my head a little bit, but it also confuses the thing as well. I don't know. In DID, also, like, they tend to have, they call them alters. If you called the Destroyer an alter, holy fuck, you would have your head blown off. So let's not go there. I don't know why that is. It's just a thing in my head, and you know, just go with it, kind of thing. So yeah. Anyway, also I've only got that one. Like I've sort of compartmentalized, I think, different aspects of my life. If any of you remember the whole M3 thing, when I was dating my ex, I basically had to create a whole third persona for myself just to deal with that somehow, which probably should have been a sign that dating was never for me, if the only way I could cope with it was to become someone else. But yeah, so that's maybe the only other time I've had any kind of compartmentalization of my mind, and it's nothing like DID. It's just like the way my brain decided to handle something that I wasn't really set up for. I mean, the whole relationship thing was her idea anyway, Destroyer's idea anyway, for dumb shit. And yeah, so where are we going with that? There's some stuff I could probably explain a bit more, but I kind of don't want to at the moment because it goes into a whole other world. Let's skip on. So I haven't fully read other theories, but there's also these things called tulpas and chaos magic spirits and so on, and that's not this. With tulpas, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but with them, as I understand it, you intentionally try and create a persona in your head, or like another person, you try and develop another person in your head. But I never tried to do this on purpose, not really. Like maybe subconsciously I've done it, but I don't know. I don't even remember when it started. I mean, I remember when it sort of got the whole title and so on, but I don't remember when the whole, you know, compartmentalizing different parts of my mind happened. It probably would have been all the way back to primary school, maybe. I don't know. The whole Catholic upbringing probably has a lot to do with it, just because, like, you know, you were supposed to act a particular way, and you sort of quickly realize that you shouldn't tell teachers certain things about what's going on in your head, and then, you know, push it away for a bit, and then it sort of just is in the background and builds. And I guess maybe that's kind of why I liked that, you know, the third X-Men movie, which everyone didn't like. That's probably the only reason I liked it, because I was like, gee, that's kind of relatable. Anyway, no, I didn't make it on purpose, although some of the things that probably happened to make it a stronger thing in my head may have been similar, just because, you know, I was writing the stories, and but I feel more like I was channeling a particular part of me rather than creating a new person in that particular sort of thing. So yeah, and if you called her a tulpa, fuck, you would be dead too. So let's not go there. And then what I very recently stumbled on, chaos magic as well, and that one, what they do all this meditation and so on to try and call up spirits, which sounds a little bit similar to the tulpa kind of thing, but with more of a supernatural-ish focus. And so I read a guide about that, and yeah, no, I mean, I suppose to some extent this operates in the same way, in the sense that I never fully lose control of myself. I always have some breaks if any shenanigans are going to happen, but yeah, I wouldn't call her a spirit though. It's really just like me and stuff in my head. Okay, so those are like my attempt to explain what it might be, what it's not. I don't know, I probably just have an overactive imagination, and I was very shy when I was younger, so I would have kept a lot of stuff in, and I don't know, at some point it's kind of, there's regular me, and then there's me plus this destroyer stuff. It would have been easier if, I had been able to get more into that headspace before making this video, so I don't have to be so anxious. But to some extent, the anxiety about it, I think, is a feature. I think if I was 100% okay with it, then it wouldn't really be a thing. Anyway, what's the next? Let's just move on. I'm sorry if it's been heaps confusing, just leave some questions for me and I'll try and get back to it. Oh yeah, there's some other stuff I haven't looked at. I was meaning to look at. So there's like ego state therapy and psychology, and then there was a whole list of other stuff that I'd started looking up but haven't got around to reading because, most of it, I think I maybe did read the ego state therapy one, but to me it sounded like one of the causes of DID, if you come from the perspective that DID is caused by therapists encouraging it. So dissociative identity disorder, one of the theories of where it comes from is you've had childhood trauma and your brain splits to help you cope with it. So a different part of you experiences the trauma, meanwhile you're off in pixie land and you don't know that any of it's happening. So that's the people who 100% believe it's a real thing tend to think it comes from. But there's the other side who think that it's iatrogenic or it's basically therapist caused. So people will sit you down in a chair and try and talk to your different personalities, and that gives you signals that you should act a particular way, and then that process causes DID. And so ego state therapy seemed very much like that kind of thing where you try and talk to the different personas someone might have and encourage them to become their own people. And I was just like, yeah, I'm not sure that is something we should really be doing. So yeah, but there's others that had similar names, and I don't know if they're the same kind of whatever. Yeah, anyway, interesting stuff to look into. To some extent, we're all different people depending on the situation, because, like, for example, the retail version of me is not the same version of me that makes YouTube videos. I can't make YouTube videos when people are around, so then, when people are around, that's a different version of me. It's just like, to what extreme do you have these different personas in your life? And I just happen to have one that is so extreme that it makes me feel weird, makes me do things in different ways, and just like is always there, gives me certain obsessions, and feels like a separate person. I'm convinced it's me making up stuff. It's convinced that it's real. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit of a... it's this weather. Anyway, so it just like, I don't want to drag the video too on, but examples of like the influence on my sense of self, things I do and how it affects me. So I've said before in other videos that I feel like I don't really have a sense of identity, but when you think about it, my only sense of identity that really feels consistent in any way is having this destroyer stuff around. My whole channel is called Destroyer Mariko. Where do you think that came from? I experimented with different names online, but this is the only one that's really stuck, and I can't get rid of it now because that would, I get a little bit of a reaction thinking about it. So yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know if it's just because like 10 years ago it was a lot stronger and it was a much bigger obsession for me, so I was constantly finding ways to channel it, get it out there and so on. I spent so much time thinking about it that I didn't really get enough time to think about other things, although I already know that's a lie because I used to be into robotics and robotics had nothing to do with this. So I guess there are parts of me that have some other interests or used to, but no, the most consistent part of my identity is that I have this thing in my head. So yeah, without it, it went away for a few years. And then I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. But then I got depressed. So it was kind of like, well, I'm not supposed to know what I'm doing because I'm depressed. And then I recovered. And then I was like, gee, I still don't know what I'm doing. But now it's back. And I'm like, okay, I guess that's what I'm doing, is something destroyer related. I'm not entirely sure what it is yet, but it's sort of been nudging me in different directions. Mainly my creativity. While I had no feeling, no sense of identity, I kind of just kept doing things that I used to do because I didn't know what else to do. But things like art, music, dressing goth, those things, honestly, I only really got into them because I've got this destroyer stuff in my head. Otherwise, I don't know what I was gonna. I would have just kept dressing in track pants, trackies, and I don't know. Probably have done maths. Maybe have killed myself by now. Oh my god, there's so much I need to go through to explain like how this has influenced me. But yeah, no, like growling, I don't know that I would have ever tried to growl if this hadn't been in my head. Yeah, and so since it came back, I actually have started to feel more creative on purpose instead of just creative because that's what I do. Now I actually feel like I have a reason to do some of that stuff. So I've been writing more music, I've been writing more poetry, which I stopped for ages. Although, the last little while I've been a bit busy, so I haven't done a whole lot. It's a little bit hard when you get busy, but yeah. And then, I've been dressing up goth more often. Now, of course, I've got Punk Rave Australia as well going on, so that's sort of given me more reasons to dress goth. But often when I hope sneezing, it's kind of cute. Often when I'd go to like the movies with a friend, I'd just sort of dress lazy goth, but now I've actually been doing my makeup. I've actually mostly been wearing that yin yang necklace because symbolism. Fucking obsessed with symbolism anytime it's around. Yeah, okay, so actually it's also the reason I watch certain movies, and if I don't, I sort of get like little cravings, but at the same time, if I do watch the movies, that kind of triggers it more, and it's this kind of cycle, but then I can't stop thinking about it, so I have to watch things like Jekyll and Hyde movies, or like read books as well. Like Animorph series has a big mind control component, because mind controlling aliens. False accusation movies like Minority Report. Am I really capable of that kind of thing? I just bought the fucking whole seventh season of Doctor Who just to get Nightmare in Silver, which is where the Cyberman gets in his head, and there's some split personality shenanigans there. Fucking Venom, the Mummy. There's like that. This is the reason that I'm into all that stuff. I don't know what I would be into otherwise. And I think, we'll go into the theory of, why the triggers work another time because I'm running out of time. And then I do silly shit like, okay, so this is also the reason I was interested in vampires. I mean, yes, like with some of my religious interest, that was partly just because of becoming an atheist and feeling empty and not really knowing what to do with my life anymore. But in terms of specific things like vampires, that's why I got interested in that, because they talk a lot about similar things like the thirst and vamping out and all these terms that I found like, I can sort of relate to some of that stuff. Like when it's sort of building and you're like, holy shit, I don't know exactly what I need to do, but I need to do something to vent the psychological pressure in my head. So yeah, vampires, that's why I got into that. There's too much that I didn't relate to, because there's also all this stuff about particular kinds of weakness, and that's not acceptable to this destroyer. No, she will not admit to any kind of weakness other than the fact of being stuck inside my head. But also, that's why I will get into the tomato soup and be like vegetarian vampire mode, because it's red and it's warm and stuff, and I'm just like, oh my god, that's fucking childish, but I can't help myself. That's probably what I'm gonna eat when I finish this, although I'm still in like hyper defensive mode, so even though I'm managing to talk about stuff, I'm also just like, no, you are not coming on camera, and I'm not even going to feel most of you. You can just like sit over there. And oh yeah, it's also the original reason that I decided not to drink any alcohol or do any drugs, because it just made me obsessed with self-control. I had this terror of losing control and people finding out about the stuff that does go on in my head. When I was really young, I used to be paranoid that people could read my mind. Yeah, so no drugs and alcohol, just in case it lowers my defenses too much and she gets out. in public, because sometimes, you know, if I'm on my own, it's not so bad. I have recently caught a couple of things on camera, which is, you know, I uploaded for Patreon. It's only like 10 seconds or something, but yeah, when I'm on my own, fine. In public, that would freak me out for some reason. I don't know. I don't even know what would happen, to be honest. Yeah. But I have switched in the presence of people before, and there are some fairly extreme things that happened a very long time ago that could have gotten me into a lot of trouble. But the brakes work, so, you know, even when I'm sort of flipping all the way out, at least it can be like, no, we are not going to cross that line, and maybe I'll just freeze for a bit. Until I can sort of pull myself out of that one. But oh my god, there's just so much to explain, and I don't have time to go through it all. But yeah, when it disappeared, I think sometime in 2015. By then, you know, I've matured and so on. So in terms of drugs and alcohol, part of the ongoing reason for that is just health. Also, being depressed, you don't mix alcohol with antidepressants, or you shouldn't. Same with drugs. And then, you know, already knowing that I was screwed up, you know, more drugs, not really going to help me. My sensitivity to side effects, not really going to help me. With drinking's not the best thing for your voice either. I mean, maybe not as bad as cigarettes, but still, you probably shouldn't do it. So I had all these other health reasons not to do those things. But yeah, the original reason was I was just so terrified of losing control. Anyway, so in conclusion, messy introduction with me being super anxious and defensive, but trying to say stuff. Yeah, so the Destroyers, like my dark split personality, isn't real, but it thinks it's real, confuses me in my head sometimes, and I guess we'll talk about some other stuff sometimes. I was kind of expecting her to get a lot stronger while I was making this video, because one of the things that does trigger it is talking about it, and especially when someone is taking it seriously on the other end, but I think maybe my defenses are just so high that it's sort of chill out. And also I'm tired, and we didn't get to watch Fight Club last night, so that maybe helps. I did watch my goodnight playlist, the first 3 videos on it, but yeah, tired, anxious, defenses. I didn't mean to go on for so long, but I'm gonna go and get some tomato soup, because I can feel the edge of it going, you know, that's part of the deal. We're gonna have tomato soup and just pretend to be a vegetarian vampire. And I don't know, I hope this kind of made sense to the new people who don't know what I was talking about with Destroyer stuff. And for everyone else, I don't know, I hope you got something out of it anyway, and leave questions and I can try and update you on things that have changed, and I'll go through some of the other stuff on the list. I'm gonna go. I'm fucking anxious. I hate this video. I want to delete it, but you know, had to be done, because otherwise I would think about it forever. So now it's done, and I can move on, and I will just chill out for the rest of the day maybe, or maybe she'll take over and we can do some music or something. I don't know. Oh, I'm a nut job.